Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechta Chulin, daf Beis. We're starting a new Masechta. It's a very long Masechta, long indeed. But let's start on daf Beis. Hakol shaychten. So right out of the gun, right out of the bat, any person, anyone can shecht, and if they do that, v'shchitas and shera, it's great, right? You would think that when it comes to all these dinim of kashrus, that we have to have such an unbelievable expert to do shechita. The Mishnah is clear; it's not the case. Anyone could do it, except for the following people: chutz mecher shad v'katan. So there are these exceptions because obviously these are people that do not have das, and therefore they cannot do the shechita. Why not? Because shemi yikilkalu eshchitastim. They may mess up the whole thing. They don't necessarily know what they're doing, and therefore that is obviously an issue. V'kun sheshachtu, in any situation, if they would shecht, v'chem roina iso shchitasim sheira. If people would watch them, so therefore they would see that it was done properly, then there's not an issue. Okay, question 10. Shchitas katan im sheira b'diavad. So bifni atzmo psul b'ni achem sheira. That's right out of the way. Now, Rashi says over here, Hakol shaychten. It says Esui mai v'chol shaychten masdisin pligi ba meroy b'gemara l'mar v'yesui tamei b'chulin. Someone who's tamei, they could shecht chulin animals. L'mar v'yesui kuti o mumer. Okay, so obviously this is something which we're going to get into, but worthwhile just pointing that Rashi out. Now, the Gemara wonders, it seems like a steer right in the Mishnah. It says, Hakol shaychten, anyone could do it, which sounds like l'chatchila, go for it. V'shchitasin sheira is diavad. And so which one is it? Is everyone able to do it l'chatchila or only b'diavad? So, Amrle Rav Achbarei, the Rebbe Rav Ashi, says, let's slow down. B'chol hakoil, anytime it says the word hakol, is that for sure it's l'chatchila? Who? Is it for sure it's l'chatchila? That the premise of the kasha is that hakol shaychten is l'chatchila. Maybe it's not true. Maybe that's also b'diavad. El miyata hakol mamirin. For example, when it comes to the din of tamura, when a person has an animal and they wish to transfer the kedusha of one animal to the next animal, so in that situation, it works. Of course, the original animal still retains its kedusha, and you're allowed to do this. And it says hakoyim amirin, echan anashim v'echan nashim, men and women. So hachanam l'chatchilu, even though it says hakoyil, does that mean it's l'chatchilu? V'oksiv l'yachvenable yamir roiso bein toiv v'rao rabatayv. It says beferish, you're not supposed to do it. It's all b'diavad. Tamur is a whole b'diavad situation. Yet it says hakoyil. So how is it that you asked me this kasha about it says hakol in our Mishnah? It's l'chatchila. It's not necessarily true. Says Rashi, Mi matzah somer l'chatchila yavi behemus chulin eitz behemus kachim, that you could do that. V'yemer zu tamura zu. This will be an exchange. Hakol de tamura mafarish hasam yasui yarish. When it says hakol over there, it's just including even a yarish can do that. Shemamir b'karbon aviv, that you can do this on his father's carbon after his father died. Dasam tanan in mamirin b'shel cherem, because you can't do a tamura on someone else's animal, but you can do it on your animal. Or if you're Yerush, so then you can do it that way too. But clearly, you can't do that. Then Tov Ra, Rashi says Tam is Tam, Toiv is Tam, and Ra is Balmum. Okay? Like Yaakov was Ish Tam, right? He was Toiv, he was a good boy. So, the answer is Hasam Kedek Tiny Taima. It explains the reason. Lo Shadim Rashai Lo Hamir, El Shim Hamir Mumar, V'Sevik Azar Abayim. It says Beferish that you get Malkus. In other words, basically, the whole notion is it already explains, in that case, Beferish, that it's a b'diavad situation. But again, maybe in our situation, it's mashmal chatchila. So maybe the steer still stands. El hakoyel ma'arichin. So when it comes to erichin, figuring out the worth of a person, and then dedicating that to the Beis HaMikdash, the nerochin, and you could also be marich, or you can be the subject of erichin, right? That either you say, I want this person, whatever his value is, or it could be my own value. It says Rashi, Hasam Mafarish Lisui Muflo Samach Ish. Means even if you're not bar mitzvah, this would work. Katan hayodel lahaflois l'shem makdishin. A person who knows who is being given over to Hashem. Hashem's the master, so they're able to do it. The im samech lepirkai, who could gain ben yod beis shanim yamechad, is at least 12 years old. Davar kayam, and then it works. Alpha b'yishadayin katan hu ad yod gimel shanim yamechad. He's still halachically a katan, but he's considered to be a mufla samach ish. He's close to being an ish, and therefore, for that reason, there are certain dinim that do apply. So, kol marichin v'nerochin, says Rashi, yesh lan erech afil mukashchin shenu shavaklom l'amacha b'shuk yesh lo erech. Even a mukashchin, which he himself has no value, there's still a din erechin as well. Noidrin v'nidrin, so also everyone can make a neder. The person can say, Demei olai, my value should be given over to the Beis Hamikdash, or Demei ploini olai, or someone else, right? So hachinamad l'chatchila, so it says hakol. So does that mean it's l'chatchila? But it's not true also. V'haksiv v'chisechta lindor li'yebachachet. If you withhold yourself from sin, you won't have from a neder, you won't sin. V'ksiv toiva shelo sidor mishetidor v'tishalim. Better not to make a neder at all than to make a neder and not pay. But Tanya, what we learn from that is toy mizah mizeh. It's better in both cases. She'enu neder kolikar divi rameir. Not just it's better. Obviously, if you make a neder and you don't keep your neder, obviously it's better to have said nothing. The point is, it's better to have said nothing, even better than making a neder and keeping the neder, because we don't want you to be making the dorim. Rabbi Yehuda Omer toy mizeh mizeh. Noidu mishalim. They feel, and Taim Mizemazeh is Noidu mishalim. It's referring to better that at least you make a neder and you pay. If I feel Rabbi Yehuda loy kamer ella ba'amer harezu, at least if all you said was this, which means you're not accepting upon yourself achrayus if it gets lost or stolen. If you look on Rashi on the bottom, the imes o nignava enocha be'achriusa inami kivan ifrasha sul haderbe. So that would be it. So even like the problem is you may not keep the neder, but if you say zu, so there's a chance that even if you don't do it, you're going to kind of get out of it anyway. So therefore, it's not as problematic. Although as we continue on with Beis, Amar Harielai lo. So we see again the word hakoil is not l'chatchila. So the whole question doesn't start. So the question 9. Tanana kol morichin v'tanana kol soimchin echadash v'echad anoshim. Mabel Rabos Hakoil de Erechin Hu de Smicha. Okay, we didn't finish this. So by Erechin, we said Rashi says it's including a mufal samach ish, and it's certainly not l'chatchila. And when it comes to Smicha, we didn't get to that yet. Okay, so let's keep moving. Okay. Is it v'kol hakoil la l'chatchilu? So you're telling me it's not a question because you just demonstrated a case where the word koil is not l'chatchilu, hakol chayavin b'sukkah, hakol chayavin b'tzitzis, hachanami d'lev l'chatchilu chayavin. So l'chatchilu. So what are you talking about, right? Obviously, you have to do it. So l'chatchilu. So Marian says chayavin lo kamina. Obviously, the fact that it says together with kol, it says chayiv. Obviously, it's not b'diavad. It's telling you must do it. So obviously, it's a chatchila. Some on a case where it doesn't say the word chayiv. El miyata hakol seimchin echad hanoshim. So we saw not too long ago that everyone does smicha, men and women alike, right before the shlita. Takev l'smicha shlita. You have to do smicha on the animal, putting your hands and putting all your weight onto the animal. When it comes to at least a carbon yachid, with 2 exceptions, as we saw in Menachos by a carbon seaborn. There's a machlokas what the 2 are, but it's like a halacha Moshe Mistinat. There was 2 by carbon seaborn. Okay. Anyway, so obviously smicha is lachatchila, right? So here's the Rashi. So why does it say Saimchin Lasu Yairish? In other words, as we said before, when it comes to, just like Tamura, so too when it comes to Smicha. So if the person's father had a carbon, father died, and you yurish that carbon, you can do Smicha. You do, not that you could, but you must. So therefore, again, so apparently, Hakol is L'chatchila. Ika Hakol L'chatchila, Vika Hakol Diavad. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You're right. El Hakoil D'Hacha Memai D'L'chatchilahu. So it must be L'chatchila. The Tikshilach Dilma Diavad. So you're saying no, maybe it's really Hakol and our Mishnah is B'Diavad. Lo Tikshilach, and there's not going to be a question to you. Armei Anah. The question is, how come it then says a second statement that the shchita is kosher, which is clear that that's b'diavad. So mechlal the hakoil lechatchilahu, right? Because if it says that the shchita is kosher, that's b'diavad. Then why does it say the statement before that hakol shaykh? Then it must be that statement is lechatchilah. Di'idi tarti diavad lamali. Why would it mention B'diavad and B'diavad? It must be talking about L'chatchila and B'diavad. But the question is, how does that make sense? How could it be L'chatchila and B'diavad? So obviously, we have to understand this. There's going to be multiple answers. We're going to see a little bit of that today, and we're going to see more of it tomorrow. So Omer Rabba Bar Ula, Katani Hakoyel Shaykh Nenavhil Tameh B'chulin. So what does it mean? Anyone could shecht? It means even if you're tameh, you can shecht an animal which is chulin. Now, of course, chulin, we don't care if it becomes tameh. So the Gemara asks, tameh b'chulin ma'al memra. Like, what's the chiddush? Like, obviously, why would you think that it's a problem, right? So we're talking about b'chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh. V'ksaver chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh k'kodesh damu. So even though it's true, so this is what it means, that we're talking about a case, says Rashi, the kibul you accept upon yourself that you're only going to eat even chulin food on a higher status of sanctity. So you're always going to be careful. Says Rashi, we're going to see what that means about a long knife, but it's talking about a situation where you shechted it and it's okay, because even though it's chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh, we say that is okay. Okay, so question 13, place arba ofanim min hachamisha, 4 or 5 of how. What does it mean by hakol shaykh l'chatchila? So there's going to be 5 answers. So the first one is tameh b'chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh is l'chatchila. So Kate said huaisa. So what should you do? Maybe sakin arucha. You should bring a long knife. V'shaychet ban shechted kadei shlo yiga b'basar, so that he doesn't end up coming in contact with the basar, because if he's tameh, he's supposed to keep the meat on the same level of kodesh, even though it's chulin. That's when it comes to chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh. It's kodesh dami. It's not exact, but it's still like kodesh. So l'chatchila you could do this. However, when we're dealing with mamish karbonos of a mikdashim yishchad, even with a large knife that maybe he's not going to end up touching it, shemayiga b'basar, we don't want him to do it because he may touch the meat. V'im shachad v'omer baruli shenaganti shchita suksher. If he says, yeah, you know what, I'm telling you I didn't touch the thing, then we believe him. Even when it comes to regular chulin, we don't care. We never let them do it, because shema yishu, maybe they're going to do shehiyah, they'll delay, right? Which is, they're not going to necessarily cut in one act. Shema yidrasu, maybe they're going to do drisa, which is pressing the knife, which is the act of shechita is supposed to be the shechita of the killing of the animal is with the movement of the knife, not by pushing in that manner. V'shema yachlidu, and also hachlada, which is like burrowing through, which this is all going to be discussed at great length, but you can see Rashi at least brings down Shem Yishu b'havi nevela kidana l'kul b'herik beis. So this is going to be more discussed there. V'kulin sheshachtu, and says anyone who shechs ahaya. What's that coming? Ilema acher shadakatan alakoi. V'im shachtu miboil. It's just saying, and if they shachted. Ela atami b'chulin. We're talking about someone who's tame shechting chulin. Ha'am l'chadchila nami shachtu. He said that he could do it. Vel atami b'mikdashim, that l'chadchila no b'midiyavad is okay. But baruli sagi. So why don't we just say that baruli is enough, right? The leisa kaman dinishayle, because there's no one here to ask. So if others were there, they could tell us he did a good job. But he is believed by himself. Hi Talmid b'mikdashim mahacha nafka. We're learning out from here that it doesn't work, but the Evan, we don't want him to do this. Mahasam nafka. Kol hapsulim sheshachtu shchitas and kshera. Anyone who's puzzled does shchit, that's good. Shechit kshera b'zarim. We know that it's not shirus. We saw this at the very end of Menachos, that it's kosher by a zar, non-kohen. B'nashim, women b'abadim with tameim, right? Even when it comes to someone who's tamei. So we already know this din, that he's not allowed to touch the meat, right? And technically, b'diavad, if he does it, it's okay, even though he's tamei. So hacha ikar hasam aidi the tana sharp sulin tananami tamei mikdashim. Okay, so you're right. It's not really adding anything over here, and that's just why it's mentioned. B'bois ema hasam ikar. Actually, over there was the main place to be kachim koi, because it was talking about kachim. Hacha, but over in our Mishnah, I did the tana tami b'chulin, tani nami tami mukdashim. So to contrast, when it comes to someone who's tami with chulin, as long as he doesn't touch it, it's okay l'chatchila with a large knife. However, not when it comes to mukdashim, we said l'chatchila no, but yeah, it's okay. So hi tami di itma b'mai. What exactly is this tumah this guy is dealing with here? If this guy is Tamei Meis, which means he's an Avatuma, so the pasuk says B'chol Cherev Rachmana, that if an Avatuma is touching a sword or metal, as we continue Gimel and Aleph, Cherev Harikachol, so it has the same status as the body itself. So how does a long knife help? Avtumahu, Latami Lasakin, Bazul Sakin Vitamis Labasar. Right, so look at this Rashi. Tuma shel mace, haruyas latami kli, k'goin mace uvenogeyabo dahavi mia avatoma. So this guy's an avatoma. Im nogbehem matechas. If he touches metal, this is the din of this pasuk. Zeres akasav that nasiki yitzabo. It becomes the same thing as the person. Im nogbe mace havi avos atoma. So the knife itself is also an av. Ve'im Betami Mace Naga Havi Av Avol Rishon Visheni in Matam and Kalin. So Vahai Sakin Nasa Av. So that's basically the question. So Maran says Ella Ditame B'Sheretz. We're talking about that this person touches Sheretz. A Sheretz is an Av. Now he became a Rishon. Says Rashi the Havi Hai Gava Rishon. And because and we know an Av can be Matam Adam Kalim. But a Rishon is not matami adam v'kalim to make it into a sheni. A Rishon can only be matama oichlin and mashkin, foods and drinks, right? This is Tumah 101, right? So therefore, it's not an issue because he's not going to be matamet if he's holding this knife. But again, obviously, we don't want him to touch the mace itself, right? Or the animal itself, rather, because then. It's possible. So what's the reason why? So this food, this animal, I guess, takes upon itself, as Rashi is going to explain, an element of a food, and therefore, if he touches the food, then it becomes a sheni. So we don't want him to do that. Okay. Really, he's an avatoma. So his knife is also going to be an av. No, it could go in shabadik. He didn't use a metal knife. He used like a stalk. He used some type of sharp reed. You can use a knife, obviously, but also a rock, glass, and therefore that's why it wasn't an issue, because it didn't transfer Tuma over. Okay, we're gonna stop there. That's it for that. Let's see, TA 30. and umatai in shaychim ubediavad kasher umatai apediavad pasul. Okay, there we go. So this is the first answer. So basically, we're talking that in the event it's chulin, right? So if it's tamei b'chulin, so therefore it's l'chatchil. However, mekdashim lo yishchait. B'diavad it doesn't work. V'im shachad v'omer barley shel negati shchitas kshera. However, not if it's a chershad v'katan. Let's see what he wrote. B'chulin l'chatchila b'kadshim imar barley. Oh, maybe others saw it, then it was okay. The imleisa kaman posel. Oh, if there's no one around, then to ask him or anyone else, that's possible. TB 3. Well, Rabbi bar Ula the Michael Choshach Matambi b'may Mayri ve'alman nemer b'mishna the shchitas u'ksher b'diavad. So this is Rabbi bar Ula. Okay, so this is the first answer. Basically the same thing. Let's see what I wrote. This is TB 3. Chulin shnasu al taras hakodesh kikodesh dal mibim shachad asakin bisakin aruch v'hu lo yigal labaser muto chatchila. Yem asakin lo aruch rak b'diavad. No, you didn't get it. Right? That's not what it is. V'im b'kadshim. B'diavad b'glas sheish. Okay. Okay. V'omar borili. If he's confident that he didn't touch. Okay.